How do power dynamics play a role in relationships? I'm Kathy Bartoli from theintimacydojo.com, and I'm here with Reed Mahalko from readaboutsex.com.
Why are you asking me?
Well, I thought it'd be fun to talk about it. Because there are power dynamics in relationships in different aspects in different areas.
Mm-hmm.
Like, a lot of relationships have places where one partner is naturally in charge. And it might be that cis white men are generally perceived as having more power in some situations.
Mm-hmm.
And in other cases, it might be the area you have experience.
What situations would they not be considered having more power?
An all-women's orgy.
I mean, they wouldn't be let in.
Exactly. No, but I think they're in general, one thing is it's groups dynamics versus individuals. Some individuals may not perceive themselves as having as much power, or may not exude as much power and carry themselves that way. But in general, a group of on average, a cis white male will have more power in a relationship, work, friendship, relationships than a cis white woman, for example, or a black man, or in general, our society gives them more power.
Mm-hmm.
How do we navigate that in relationships? It can be really challenging.
Yeah, I mean, one way is to talk about it, but that doesn't necessarily change the dynamic.
No, but having awareness is a good first step.
Mm-hmm.
There definitely is. There can be times when, if I've just taught on stage, people might perceive me as having more power.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've been the teacher, and we've all been conditioned, if either the doctor in the white coat or the person on stage or teaching is considered more powerful and are in charge.
Mm-hmm.
And just acknowledging, like, hey, I was just teaching, and I'd like to now relate to you as an equal. Is that possible? That could be useful.
And how would you be able to trust their answer?
One, it's hard to trust people's answers sometimes. Like, people are not always, I myself am not always aware of the different, I might be, of course I can be equal with you, and not realize till later that, oh, wow, I was really wowed by what you taught, and it's not all that clear. That wasn't clear to me in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing I've really loved that you and I've talked about before is, like, it's not a perfection model.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to get this perfect. None of us have little barometers on our head saying, I have this much power, you have this much power, I perceive you as this much power. Like, and we're going to, and then we calibrate and we're all good.
You might be asking yourself the question, why would you even ask a white guy that question? How would I know the answer if I've always been, societally speaking, on top of the mountain, or on top of the food chain, so to speak, of privilege?
Again, there's a difference between groups and individuals.
Mm-hmm.
To me, the cis white men have been in power. That doesn't mean you, Reed Mahalko, have always been in power. You were once a small child. Small children generally have less power than adults.
Mm-hmm.
There's probably situations where you were less powerful, like you were when you first joined football, you probably weren't the captain. So we've all had experiences of having...
What was I?
If you've told me stories, I know you weren't. But we've all had experiences of feeling less powerful.
Mm-hmm.
To say, oh, cis white men are always on top. Indeed, as a group, that's true. But as an individual, we all have different times where we feel more or less powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And knowing where people are sitting, like how they're feeling at the moment, and just acknowledging that we can be influenced strongly by our perceived status. I think it's worth having that dialogue.
I think so too. I mean, I think it's something that people don't necessarily talk about, outside of like kink dynamics, where they're explicitly trying to play with power, or at least figure out what's a good fit for everybody. And then there's, in restorative justice and transformational justice, there's a lot of conversation about power and the ethics around it, and how those things influence consent, which is, that conversation is alive and well.
Mm-hmm.
That was something I went through, like, the conversation is still alive and well for me, but going through an accountability process to try to figure out, like, how do you behave more ethically? Mm-hmm. And I think part of what I'm learning is that there's not always an answer. There's a conversation, and then everybody's showing up to the conversation with where whatever they have, amassed in their journey. And then we're here, and then some people are in situations where it does not feel safe to have this conversation. And that usually for the people more in power, it's easier for us to talk about it because there's less at stake, because the tendencies are, it might not feel like I'm safer always, but less harm tends to happen. There will be less repercussions for a white guy speaking up about something. There's less at risk.
Well, I think there's
and we don't always, we don't see that that's happening. I just think I'm confident. Well, if the world was taking a big fucking shit on me every day, I might feel less confident now, wouldn't I?
Yeah. Well, we've had some discussions about that too. I love, the thing is, our survival brain really is conscious of status and how safe we are and how high up on the pecking order we are. It just is part of how humans interact. And if I admit I feel less powerful, if I'm already feeling, if I'm not feeling powerful, admitting that feels kind of like, that's frightening to me because I don't want to give up any more power than I've already lost. And I think that if a person in power that has the societally influenced power can say, hey, I'm noticing it feels like I have this, or I've had this privilege, or this societal support to have confidence or power in the situation, that can open a dialogue where people can even acknowledge that there's times when we all feel powerful. I know powerful and powerless. And the less I take care of myself, like if I'm really tired and I've had a rotten day, I'm certainly going to feel less powerful in the same exact situation where, it could be the same situation in general, but if I've had enough rest, I've had a friend that said, hey, good job on that or whatever, when the more full our tanks are, I think that can influence our relative power even in a given situation.
Well, I mean, the idea of being resourced.
Yeah.
Again, I don't even know that I should be talking on this subject because there are so many opportunities for privilege and people to assume, because I have a YouTube channel, that I know what I'm talking about, that I can talk about my experience, which is a valid experience, but the tools that will help somebody who is legitimately in a different pecking order, I don't know that I would naturally come up with those tools, because why would it occur to me, what do you mean? We all have access to power, don't we? Which is not true.
Yeah. Well, I think the point of what I wanted to make was just we can talk about it. And we can choose who we talk about if we don't have to talk to someone we don't feel safe with. But even if you're talking to people you feel at the same power level, acknowledging that there can be differences and that we want to all have a voice no matter where we are in the pecking order, I think is really useful.
Yeah. I mean, starting the conversations, giving people a voice, for me, myself, I'll speak for myself, but maybe people who look like me, shut up, listen to the people who generally don't have a voice, and when appropriate, ask or take a workshop to find out what those tools are.
I think it's really useful. You were very open for me talking about it. I've spoken to other people where there's just the privilege is just assumed, and they're like, what are you talking? There was no opening to talk about it, and that's really hard.
A lot of the things I had to learn were that there were a lot of things that were just invisible to me because you just don't notice.
Yeah.
The world is very much set up to keep me feeling comfortable.
You as a cis white male.
Yeah. Because what if I behave badly if I feel uncomfortable? And who will stop me?
Yeah.
And then what are the repercussions? And those are interesting questions and conversations. And you could attach ethics to those things.
Yeah. Well, thanks for being willing to talk about it. I think it's just modeling that we can talk about it and not always have all the answers is just a really powerful thing.
Yeah.
So if you have questions or comments, please leave them below. We'd love to hear what you think.
Yeah. Oh man, I have a stain on my shirt. Weird.
Did that lower your confidence?
Not my power.